everyone, welcome to this show. My name is Sunil Robert, and the show is entitled Comeback Stories with Sunil. The reason I use the word comeback is built on an ancient proverb that you could fall down seven, but you rise eight. So, in fact, I'm almost tempted to call my show Comeback 8, like Ocean's 11, right? Anyways, comeback is a topic that is very dear to me. But the word comeback presupposes that you have fallen, that you've hit the ground, that you've bit the dust, so to speak. And so there is this whole notion of an implied theme called contest or competition, or even broader, conflict. So today I really want to talk to you about how inherent in the human heart is conflict. You see, right from the time a baby is born and the baby is starting to grow into a toddler, there is an inherent tension and conflict inside the baby. Every time the baby is hungry, it learns to sense that inherent conflict and say, between where I should be, which is a fully happy baby, and where I am right now, this hunger, this almost irritation that is creeping in is that inherent conflict. And so to resolve that conflict, the baby learns to communicate. And so today I want to talk about this inherent conflict that everyone experiences almost on a daily basis. Have you ever wondered why, if you're stuck in a traffic jam, you start jamming the horn and you start playing percussion on your horn? Why? Will your increased decibel levels make any tangible difference to the cars ahead? They are stuck for a reason. They are stuck because the cars ahead are stuck. And then if you go into a progressive movement forward, there was a crash or something that happened, and that's causing a jam. But we don't rationalize it that way. We just sense that conflict, and that conflict leads to dysfunctional behavior. The point I'm making is, unless you are really tuned to the conflict in your heart and mind, you will never be able to live a full life. For example, why do people have a clear calendar in front of them and say, hey, this is how my day is going to look? Because they're trying to minimize the potential of a conflict. In fact, they use this word, hey, I've got a conflict on my calendar. The very word conflict comes back, meaning that this person is got a clear set of priorities, and if you infringe on that person's priorities, you're creating a conflict for them. So conflict is all around on a day-to-day basis. How you resolve it makes for excellent progress. But here's the point. Most people never pay attention to their inner conflict. Now, Daniel Goleman, the famous psychologist, talked about how self-awareness is the foundation for emotional intelligence. So if you look around and you see people, despite being stuck in a jam, and I'm using this traffic jam as a metaphor for life all around. It could be a career that is stalled. It could be a relationship that you've become stagnant in and you're not able to get out of. It could be a bad boss that is impeding your progress. It could be your own frustration that you're not able to make progress in the skills that you want to build. No matter what, that this traffic jam or this feeling of being constricted in your life will lead you to negative outcomes. Either you'll implode, meaning you will take all those negative energies into you and then boom, just some damage happens, or you'll explode, causing external damage on people, surroundings all over you, and the people who are dear to you will suffer. So no matter what way this conflict is manifesting within you, I urge you to start paying attention to any time you're feeling restless. So the first manifestation of conflict is restlessness and distraction. Remember, I was speaking in Atlanta at a conference this weekend, and one of these lines that came when I was speaking with these young people was, distraction precedes destruction. I repeat that. Distraction precedes destruction. In fact, in New Jersey, there is a law, not very widely known, but it's called apparently the Hannah Law. Hannah was a 17-year-old teenager who was driving an automobile and she was texting. And just before she hit the word send, for a moment of distraction, she turned her eyes away from the road and to her phone, and she crashed into a road divider and she unfortunately died. Since then, New Jersey law made it very strict for operating a cell phone while operating an automobile. So the intent is the more strict the rules become, hopefully drivers will become more aware and not cause automobile accidents. Now, this distraction leading to or preceding destruction is actually a function of how you feel in your own spirit. You see, when you're absolutely focused or in the zone, like sports people use the term, I'm in the zone, it is a moment where it's your body, mind, spirit, they all align and you're channeling that energy into a tangible outcome that is right in front of you. In elite sports people's case, it is just that moment in the game where they are so focused that they just don't see anything else. So, going back to this conflict and distraction, anytime you are feeling out of sync and you are either multitasking or are feeling an sort of a fidgety feeling inside of you, it may be a time to put a pause on your life. No matter where you are, the very way you can resolve distraction or get to the bottom of the conflict, because unless you actually cut away all these distractions and get to the core of conflict, you'll never truly be able to make sense of what is causing this internal dissonance. Now, the word dissonance actually comes from a business concept called cognitive dissonance, meaning anytime you're buying a new product or a service or you're paying a good amount of money, then your mind is actually going through what is called dissonance, which is where marketers try to say building a brand and building a loyal buyers, a set of loyal buyers, or building a tribe around the brand will reduce the dissonance. Meaning, anytime a consumer buys a product, for example, I'm a big believer in brands. Brands build loyalty. Brands increase trust. You trust brands, right? For example, if I buy a jacket or a suit, and somebody says, "Hey, I know you love suits," and they give me an Armani, I'd just be over the moon. Not because the cloth, the fabric, the stitching, they are somehow very different, or I overnight look like a GQ model. No, it is none of those. It is that assurance that if it is bearing the name Armani or any other luxury brand, you're expected that because it's such a high profile brand or a luxury brand, a certain quality is expected of that brand. So, this dissonance that you experience anytime you invest in a brand is, will I get the perceived value that I'm ascribing in my mind when I do this exchange of where my money is going and this material is coming into my hand and becoming a possession of mine? So, to assuage that mental disturbance and bringing them to a state of trust, brand marketers use different strategies, but most importantly, they say, you got to trust our brand because many others have trusted. You've got to trust our brand because it comes from the house of Armani or a particular brand which stood the test of time. Going back to the internal conflict that I mentioned a moment ago, the only way you can reduce or resolve that dissonance is going back to an oft used word called purpose. Why are you here? I mean, literally, why are you here? What are you doing right now? When you have a clear sense of purpose, that internal dissonance or conflict or restlessness will be diminished. We are journeying through life all the time from lack of clarity towards purpose, from just being distracted towards a perceived vision, from a state of chaos into a state of calmness and clarity. Think about it. The word purpose is actually oft used in semi religious terms or corporate purpose, mission, and that kind of a word. But each individual has to have a purpose. For example, Mark Twain, or better known as Samuel Clemens, the great American humorist, said there are two most important days in everyone's life. First is the day you're born, and the second, the day you know why. Two most important days in your life, the day you're born and the day you know why. You might ask me, okay, sirs, you're waxing eloquent so much. What's your purpose? I'm glad you asked me. My purpose is to transform the world using my communication skills. Defined. I defined this about 25 years ago as a rising young man in the city of Hyderabad in the southern part of India. In those 25 years, the jobs I've accomplished, the platforms that I've spoken in, the books I've written, the people I've met, they all converge to that purpose of making a difference in the lives of people around me. Now, initially, I said change the world or transform the world, but I realized that was a bit too weighty or a bit too grandiose or too almost arrogant, bordering on arrogance. Then I changed it to transform my world. Because changing my world is within my control. I cannot impact some people who are in Africa or some parts where I physically cannot go, but I can certainly impact the people that are crossing my path every single day, either at work or at my community or at my church or in the playgrounds that my kids go to. I could make a difference there. So my purpose resolves the fundamental conflict that I experience on a day-to-day basis. Why is it important to resolve this? Often we are stuck in wrong jobs. Often we are stuck in wrong relationships. Often we are stuck in negative behavior that is caused by your own self. In fact, going back to the Atlanta conference that I spoke in, I talked to these young people some basic principles of building great habits. And I told them, first you make your habits and then the habits make you. First, you make your habits, you build your habits, sometimes almost automatically. And then automatically, those habits build you either to an exalted state of glory or to a diminished state of accomplishment. Conflict resolution is a daily habit that you need to move from chaos to purpose. It manifests itself in the way you consume content, for example. As a dad of two boys, I'm always watchful of how my kids are spending time on their screens. That's just a metaphor or an analogy of habits. Now, if you're used to doom scrolling all day, you'll wonder where the hours went. The tasks that were given to you by either your bosses, colleagues, or parents, or even if you're young and married and your spouse, they stay there on your task list. And you wonder where the time has gone because you've got into this rabbit hole of scrolling from one reel to another, from one video to another. All of them absolutely delightful, just pleasing the eye, pleasing the ear, pleasing the heart, giving you that artificial stimulus of dopamine, but you've just been consuming. So if you have to move from this consumer of content to something like a creator of content, that's when you're moving against this habit of consumption into a habit of creation. And not all of us are called to be creators. It could just be that you're doing well at a job, you have a day job, or if you're in college, you're in college. If you're in high school, you're in high school. But are you doing justice to what you're supposed to be doing at that particular time? If you're not, then dissonance, conflict sets in again. So you see, ultimately, it comes down to a clarity of vision as to what your purpose is. The only way you can resolve conflict is through clarity on how it can be resolved. If you don't have it, you start making peace with that discomfort that comes in. In the past, I've talked about how elephants are chained to a wooden stake. When a baby elephant is born, they just put a small chain around one of its leg and tie it to a small wooden 3-foot pole. Even after the elephant grows big, a small wooden pole is enough to hold it down. This massive, humongous animal could easily jerk off that wooden peg and walk with its chain. But it doesn't, because it's conditioned by years of habitual triggers that keep on saying, no, you're chained. So this conflict, understanding where this dissonance is coming from, is a key element in resolving your purpose. In the next video, I will talk to you about how do you find the 3 or 4 elements that constitute your purpose.